Now when it comes to life, the Bible covers every aspect. It covers murder, adultery, stealing, and sex. Because God is the maker of all things. Some people must forget. Because if you don't teach the youth them, then them will learn from the world. And the only thing the world teach them is anywhere, anytime, and with anybody. Yes, sir. Have mercy. Well, better teach them about sex, 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 sex. Teach them about sex, 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 sex. Sex, 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 sex. Better teach them about. Even tell them notice in the church today. I will say none of these churches want to talk about sex. That's why our community in such a big mess. You know, teaching in church, you don't have teaching in school. That's why the youth them ignorant to the sex rule. I say none of these churches want to talk about sex. That's why our community in such a big mess. You know, teaching in church.
Before I say anything, I hope to God that y'all didn't come out here to see Danielle Williams, but you came to see the glory in God. You're sadly mistaken if you came to see me. But anyhow, I'll start off letting you guys know some things about me. See, first of all, when you think of somebody who is in the porn industry or somebody who's a prostitute or a drug addict or things like that who choose, I guess, detrimental paths, you automatically judge them. But I always tell people there's a reason behind everybody's actions. Nobody just does stuff just to do it. So before I was the porn star and the stripper and the prostitute and the gangbanger and the drug addict and the drug dealer, there was things that led up to those decisions. I come from a very, my father's Jamaican, and I come from a Jamaican background. And not to put down Jamaicans, but we all know that they can be very abusive at times, just like Barbadian men, just like a lot of Caribbean men, like American men. They can be very abusive, and him and my mother were very abusive toward one another. And so when they divorced, they decided that I stay with my father. So my father raised me, and in that household, my father was a womanizer. He was very abusive to the women that were in his life. And as for a child, me growing up seeing that, children imitate what their parents do. That's why it's very important to watch what you say and you do in front of your children, because they're paying attention. And so I grew up seeing my father beat women, I mean, to bloody, bloody pulps. And I grew up seeing this, thinking that this was normal, thinking that this was supposed to happen because I didn't know any better. And as a result, that was my mindset, that men are supposed to beat women. When I was 8 years old, my father used to take me to a babysitter's house. And the babysitter was a very nice lady, but she had a son around 14 to 15 years old, and I was 8 at the time. And when the babysitter would leave the house, she would leave her son in charge of the kids. And out of all the girls there, I was his pick. He would take me into his room, and he started off by just touching me between my legs. And then he started putting his fingers inside of me. Then he started putting toys inside of me at the age of 8. So you can imagine how painful that was and what that does to a child psychologically. Shortly after that, and no, I never told anybody. That's why I always mention to the young people I talk to, if anybody is molesting you or touching you, it's your duty to tell someone, because I never said anything. So time went on, and I didn't say anything, and now I'm 10 years old, living with my alcoholic, bipolar, mentally diseased father, who one day had an episode because he drank and he took medication, and we all know you don't mix alcohol with medicine. So he had what you call a psychotic outbreak, and he tried to kill me. In a sense, people always say, well, how did he try to kill you? My father beat me for hours with a paddle, with a wooden paddle and the buckle of a belt in his fist. Then after that, after passing out twice because of being beaten for hours, he then put me in the bathtub and tried to drown me at 10 years old. I thank God that he snapped out of it before it was too late. He took me to school the next day, and the teacher saw my face, and she called the police and everything like that. So I was snatched out of my father's home and placed in my mother, well, no. I actually bounced from house to house. Everybody wants to know, where was your mother at? When my mother and father divorced, my mother just disappeared. She remarried, and she had my brothers, and it was as if I never existed. So having been molested and beaten almost to death by my father, I was also rejected by my mother. So when that happened with my father, they bounced me from house to grandmother, to friend of the family, to aunt, to everybody. And 2 years had passed. I was now 12 years old, and they decided to put me with my mother, someone who I barely knew. Even though she was my mother, I still barely had any type of interaction with her. So as a result of that, I'm the type of person, when I don't feel like dealing with you, I'll stand to myself, I'll sit to myself. And I didn't like being at home because I felt like I was in the house of a stranger. So I would sit outside for hours at a time, just play outside with myself. And there was a guy, a neighbor, who was directly across the street from us. And he would always be nice to me and offer candy and buy toys and play basketball with me and things like that. So in my eyes, at 12 years old, being young and naive, I perceived him as a friend. So when he invited me in his home, I didn't think nothing of it because this was my friend. So when I went into his house, he gave me something to drink, and he put a date rape drug inside of it, which causes you to pass out or black out when you consume it. So here I am, 12 years old, drinking something which I thought was a soda or some juice because he offered it to me, and I passed out, and I woke up with this man on top of me at 12 years old, and he had to be in his late 30s or early 40s. So you can imagine the hatred that I started to feel towards men. Every time I was hurt, it was by the hands of a man. So at 12 years old, I started to have a hatred towards boys, and I became very violent. I used to beat up boys. Every time I saw a boy, I used to just beat him up because I was so angry. I blamed that boy for every other man that did something to me. When I was 13 years old, it was one boy, actually a man whom I liked. I was 13 years old. He was 27, and he was a pimp. Everybody knows what a pimp is, and prostitution is very big in the States and outside of the country as well. But he was a 27-year-old pimp who played as if he liked me and that he was interested in me. But what he was interested in is me prostituting myself for him. He didn't tell me that right off the bat, and we had sex one time, and I became pregnant at the age of 13 years old by this 27-year-old pimp. Of course, I told him that I was pregnant, and like any other man in his shoes, he denied it and told me, that was my problem and things like that. Then he called me back and suggested that I have an abortion. I don't believe in abortions. I believe if you get pregnant, that's your responsibility to take care of that child. So I refused the abortion, and I carried on in my pregnancy and got involved with another young man who was very abusive towards me. This was my first abusive relationship at the age of 13 years old. This was the first time a man actually beat me in a relationship. And I was being beaten throughout my whole pregnancy, which caused me to go into an early labor and I had my son. My son was alive, but eventually he passed away. So now 13 years old, hadn't already been molested and beaten and almost killed and raped again. And now I had a child by a 27-year-old man who just died. So now I hate men at this point, and I decide that I'm going to be with women at this time in my life. And obviously that didn't work for obvious reasons. When I was with women, two women, first of all, women do not get along all the time. And when you try to put them in a relationship, it does not work. I became the abuser in that relationship because, once again, this is what I saw. My father beat his women, and now that I have a girlfriend, I'm going to beat her. So that didn't work. And plus, I knew that the gay life was not for me because I liked men. So that didn't work for